You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Folks, 3 black men who served 36 years in a Maryland prison were freed Monday after new evidence exonerated them in the killing of a Baltimore teen in 1983. Alfred Chestnut, Ransom Watkins, and Andrew Stewart were arrested on Thanksgiving and accused of killing 14-year-old Dewitt Duckett in the hallway of Harlem Park Junior High School over his Georgetown University jacket. Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby said that a reinvestigation produced new evidence and testimony from witnesses that proved they were innocent. Here's their reaction as they left the courthouse last night.
I'm looking forward, man, to living the rest of my life.
It wasn't easy. You see us out here, we smiling. We're happy that we're free, but we got a lot to fix.
My journey just beginning.
Amen. One end and one beginning.
Because I got to learn how to live right now.
Folks, it was a special unit created by Marilyn Mosby, a victim integrity unit that really was about reinvestigating that case. There are a number of progressive DAs all across the country who have created these particular units. In fact, I am here in Houston where a black man happened to also he got bail as a result of, in a very similar case where he was accused of killing a man in the Montrose area. It is a largely gay area here in Houston. He was convicted solely based upon eyewitness testimony. 6 to 10 people testified in his case. Well, several people testified that they could see him. They were standing some 6 to 10 feet away. It was absolutely him. Yet, there were skin found under the fingernails of the man who was killed. At the time, the DNA testing could not test that level of evidence. Well, after that was the case, the murder took place in 2010. Scientific evidence today, the Innocence Project got involved, tested the skin underneath those fingernails. It did not match the man who has been in prison. But they put it in a database, and it did match another man who had been convicted of several violent crimes. DA Kim Ogg here in Houston asked for bail for them to move forward with the case for further investigation. And again, he will be walking out of prison as well. I want to go to my panel there in D.C. Joining me now is Melik Abdul, Republican strategist, Kelly Bethea, communication strategist, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist, president emerita at Bennett College. And I want to start with you, Julianne. Bottom line is this here. When we look at these cases, they are largely black men. Yeah. They're largely African Americans. Very few times there are white men who have been convicted, who are served time in prison, and they simply didn't do it. When we look at these cases, whether we talk about the case in Houston, the 3 men in Baltimore, cases in Louisiana, in North Carolina, in Virginia, we can go on and on and on. These are black men. This is what people talk about when they say that you have a criminal justice system that is unfair to African Americans, it targets African Americans, and these are black men spending 36 years in prison.
You know, they went in.
That is shocking.
They went in as teenagers. They're coming out as mature men in their 50s. They've lost much of their life. And the state of Maryland, Roland, does not pay folks. Some states will pay you. You've been in jail so many years, they'll pay you so much a year. Maryland explicitly does not pay people. The legislature will have to introduce legislation to compensate them for the time that they've lost. But the point about it being black men is this whole unconscious bias, along with police, basically police bias, the Central Park Five, designed to believe the worst about any black man and decide we want to close this case real quickly. The other thing, you made the comment about white folks. Most white men who do get into this situation have resources. That's why the Innocence Project is so important. If you're poor, you don't have the resources for an attorney, and so you're basically on your own. And some people take a plea because rather than, get a longer sentence. So it's absolute discrimination. And, a week or so ago, we talked about Mike Bloomberg and his apology for stop and frisk. If his apology was real, maybe he put some money into the Innocence Project or into some legal defense fund for folks who are unjustly convicted.
But here's the deal, Julian. This is a man who also refused to actually settle the case. He did not want the Central Park Five to get any payment. And so that speaks to Mike Bloomberg is, Kelly, I want to read this for you, Kelly. I just typed in, I was trying to pull up the story to get the name of the man in Houston who, of course, was just granted bail. This is what I typed in. DNA in Google. DNA frees Houston man. But here's what came up. DNA evidence frees man convicted of murder. That is a July 6, 2001 story from the Houston Chronicle. He was a Waco man who was convicted of a 1986 rape and murder. And it was because of DNA evidence where this man freed from prison. Was he African American? The answer is yes. Another story, DNA frees Dallas man wrongly imprisoned for rape. April 16th, 2009, Thomas McGowan, African American. A man held for 23 years is set free by DNA test. This is the man, Ernest Saunier, August 7th, 2009, New York Times story. He also is, again, an African American. Now, I'm not done. Here's what's amazing. I'm not done yet. I'm seeing DNA frees Austin man charged in wife's death. This was August 3rd, 2011. He happened to actually be white. DNA frees another inmate wrongfully imprisoned. It goes down. I mean, you can continue to go see these stories, and it's amazing. The more I haven't even gotten to the case yesterday. These were literally other cases in Texas in the last 20 years, and we'll see it in other states where DNA is clearing individuals who didn't do it, and nearly every case, Kelly, they're black.
And what's really sad about this is when DNA testing did become a mainstream way of was integrated into like boilerplate investigation of homicides, murders, what have you, they knew at the time that it was still something that was a work in progress. So for you, even though DNA is definitely necessary for investigations, it's not perfect. And the accuracy to date, even now, is still not perfect. So with these cases that have been, because of DNA testing now, these men have been freed. I feel like there should be an initiative nationwide regarding DNA testing, and there should be a database or something to that effect that will basically review these cases as DNA testing gets more advanced. Almost automatically, these cases that have DNA testing as a result of their incarceration, they should have first dibs on getting that case reviewed upon a new development in DNA, because this is just not fair. It's not fair at all. It's even
worse, man. Like when I see this story here, you ought to see, this is from the Marshall Project. When Jerry Hartfield walked out of the Hutchins State Jail in Dallas on Monday, the date line of this story is June 12, 2017. When he walked out of the jail on Monday into the sunlight in the arms of his family, he became one of the most unlikely prisoners ever to be freed early in Texas. He wasn't exonerated or released on parole. He wasn't pardoned by the governor. No one else has confessed to the murder for which he was convicted in 1977. No DNA cleared him. No witness recanted. No celebrities pleaded his cause. Hartfield was freed from prison because Texas finally gave up trying to find a valid reason to keep him there. He had waited 35 years between trials without a conviction, a prisoner simply forgotten for decades in the state's massive justice system. What we're seeing, that's just a very unique case. When you talk about these integrity units, where you have people, it happened here in Texas, in Dallas, Craig Watkins, the first black DA in Texas, created a unit to retest cases. More than 30 people were actually freed. What Marilyn Mosby is doing in Baltimore, what is happening all across the country, they are going back and frankly looking at messes created by largely white district attorneys who threw people in jail, who basically used shameful testimony, who collaborated with unethical cops to put people in jail. And I dare say in that Baltimore case, if I was the city of Baltimore, I would try to take that cop to court who framed these 3 black men, who is retired and getting his pension, but they're going to have to pay because of his actions.
On your last point, I absolutely agree with that. They absolutely should target his pension. You know, this is good news in the sense that they got out, but we hear these stories over and over again. Just as I was doing some of the research on it, when you think about the fact that since 1989, the 2,500 or so men and women who were actually exonerated, you know, 49% of that number were black men. So that's data. You know, you can fudge data a bit here and there, but that's data that we have that we can use to make the argument that this is something that we definitely need to pay attention to. I was listening to the case that you said.
But Melly, not just data. Don't leave out how much it cost.
Well, yeah,
what you're talking about is
billions.
Of those wrongfully convicted, 49% are black men. Folks, since 1989, taxpayers have spent or cost them almost $1 billion to incarcerate black men and women later found to be innocent. Nearly $1 billion.
Yeah, and if you think about that, I mean, if you really kind of you know, expand that a bit, it really shouldn't. We shouldn't be surprised at that, because when we consider the amount of money that we use to incarcerate people who should not be in jail at all, whether that's on the mental health side, whether we're now trying to do with the decriminalization of marijuana, you know, this country has no problem sending people to jail and forcing taxpayers to actually pay for that. One thing that I wanted to mention, though, you know, as great as the effort is with the Innocent Project and some of the other projects that are out there, one thing that we have to mention, you know, and we're talking about a presidential election here, you know, this is, you know, one of the reasons that people are hesitant to support prosecutors and for President of the United States. And I think we've only had a few, maybe 2 or 3 prosecutors, former prosecutors, who become President of the United States. And that's not to put the onus on any particular person, in this case, Kamala Harris, but when people have reservations about prosecutors, you know, all of that angst is built in, and whether or not we should support someone. But I'm glad that these guys are out. I think that we should continue to support. I wish we had a more bipartisan effort around these things, but, you know, our politics is what it is. But it's great that they've been released, but let's work on getting everyone else out who shouldn't be in there, including the people not just who
But, you know, let's work on making sure also that they're compensated.
But Julian, hold on. Here's the deal. To Melik's point, look, you can be leery about supporting a prosecutor, but here's the deal. Thank God for black prosecutors, like former prosecutor DA Craig Watkins in Dallas, and Marilyn Mosby, and the late Kenneth Thompson in there in Brooklyn, and Aramis Ayala, who was there in Florida, the first black state's attorney, and Kim Fox in Chicago. And then, of course, you have Larry Krasner, who was white in Philadelphia. Thank God you have these progressive prosecutors who were elected, who beat Republicans in Virginia, who just won an upstate race in New York. These progressive DAs who are the ones leading the charge. And let's not forget, Julian, it is Donald Trump's Attorney General, William Barr, who gave a speech saying that these progressive DAs are going to cause an increase in crime. It is Donald Trump's district attorney who is against these progressive DAs. It is Donald Trump. Because Melik, you talked about our politics, but Julian, it is Donald Trump himself who spoke to the law enforcement officers, the police chiefs at a convention in Chicago a few weeks ago, criticizing these progressive DAs. They are the reason these units have been created, but Donald Trump and his DOJ do not want these progressive DAs in power.
You're absolutely right, Roland. If you look at 45, I don't like to call his name, but if you look at 45 and his actions, especially with his judicial appointments, what we're going to see is less leeway. Judges have a lot of discretion. We're going to see some of them using less discretion, going by the book. Even there have been cases where the DNA evidence exonerated somebody, but the judge would not dismiss the charges. So we're going to see a lot more of that. This is the line everybody uses: elections have consequences. So all those people who didn't want to vote, okay, this is what you got. They didn't like Hillary. They want to stay home. They weren't enthusiastic. I tell people all the time, the only time I was ever enthusiastic about voting for a president was Barack Obama. And I've been voting since 1972. So these false narratives are really what we could leave us with this same situation again. And the other thing I was saying when Melik was talking, I want there to be federal legislation to require states or others to compensate people for the time they've lost.
Absolutely.
These people are going to have to find jobs. They probably never had a cell phone in their hand. Any number of things. They need training. They need employment. They need opportunities in education. And basically, in the state of Maryland, there is no requirement to do that.
And see, Melik, I got to ask you. I mean, you talk about our politics. You voted for Trump and Mike Pence. This is the same Mike Pence who refused to grant a pardon to a black man who was exonerated. Mike Pence was the governor of Indiana. His own pardons board voted unanimously to release this black man, Keith Cooper, who was convicted, served time, almost 20 years, and Mike Pence refused to even grant the pardon. So when you talk about our politics, it is largely Republican politicians who do not want to honor these commitments and who are the ones who are opposing these folks being granted pardons or release.
Well, I don't have any evidence to back that up. I hear what you're saying about
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Here's the deal.
I'll let you finish my point,
right here.
Roland. I'll let you finish my point. Go ahead.
Melik, you said no, hold up.
Well,
you said no evidence.
I barely got 5 words out before you interjected, so I'll let you finish what my point was.
No. I only want to show the audience. This is a story from the Christian Science Monitor. The headline, Why Mike Pence Won't Grant Pardon to Exonerated Indiana Man. His name is Keith Cooper. I want everybody watching to Google it. I interviewed Keith Cooper. I talked to him and his lawyer. Those are facts.
Okay, I don't know anything about it.
But go right ahead.
You giving me that information while we're on air. I said I didn't know anything about it, which is actually true. I don't know anything about it. Sure, Mike Pence can be held accountable for that, but this doesn't need to be a conversation about Donald Trump, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of those people who were exonerated, they were locked up under various presidents, under various departments, departments of justice. No. Okay, well, I'll let you finish my point again.
No, Melik, No, Melik, you said the issue is not locked up under various presidents. I am speaking specifically about the fact that progressive district attorneys are creating the kind of units to reinvestigate cases that freed the black man in Houston, that freed the 3 black men in Baltimore. And what I'm saying is the man who you supported and the man who you will support next year is against those progressive DAs.
Well,
his Attorney General,
Roland, I've literally never heard Donald Trump speak out against any DA who was fighting for people to be exonerated while he was here in office.
Are you serious?
But he was in Chicago. He did that.
Wait a minute. Melik, just 3 weeks ago.
Okay, well, just go ahead.
Where have you been?
Go ahead and finish what my point was, Roland. You seem to do that better than me.
No. Ooh. No, I'm asking you, where have you been? We literally covered it on this show.
What I clearly said, and we can extend that to Barr, I have not heard them speak out against the notion that people be, exonerated for crimes they did not commit. You can bring up the Central Park Five. You can talk about the Central Park Five, but I have not heard. You said that Donald Trump and William Barr were speaking out against progressive attorneys. That's different. That's very different. That's very different than being against these progressive attorneys because they were actually exonerating innocent people. I don't know what Barr was referring to.
Are you telling me Are you telling me, Melik, you don't recall Donald Trump refusing to apologize for the Central Park Five while running, and even when the Netflix movie came out, Donald Trump refused to even apologize again? In fact, he said they should still be in jail. You don't recall any of that?
I absolutely do, but you're talking about his administration. I think that's what you were referring to, right? So you're saying,
yes,
you
Donald
are
Trump
saying, which you haven't presented any evidence,
Wow.
Well, you can but I mean, if you're going to continue to just cut me off, why don't you just interview yourself instead of me? Because I'm actually telling you that I have not heard William Barr reference anything about not being in support of people who haven't been exonerated. You can talk about that maybe there are other issues that the Department of Justice is doing, but I haven't heard William Barr say anything against any attorney or otherwise who are freeing innocent people, working to free innocent people from jail.
Kelly,
I said I have not heard that. You said you've heard it. Okay.
Kelly,
heard it.
William Barr and Donald Trump in the last 2 months have specifically trashed progressive district attorneys
for exonerating people
and saying that I'm not done. They have trashed them, saying their election will cause crime to increase. So if, Kelly, you're a communications specialist, if you say that progressive DAs should not be elected, what comes along with those progressive DAs are innocence-type projects to retest evidence. So therefore, if you don't get progressive DAs, you don't get these programs, Kelly.
So this isn't anything you have any evidence of. You're just saying.
So,
Kelly, go right ahead, Kelly.
So to your point, I'm sorry, that was funny. What am I trying to say? Just because you were talking about me being a communication specialist, that is true. But even if they didn't explicitly say these DAs are bad, their silence actually speaks more volumes to the issue than anything else. If you have a DA, such as Marilyn Mosby, who is exonerating 3 people who have been in jail unlawfully so, for 36 years, and you don't hear the head of this country, your commander-in-chief, the head of the executive branch, actually congratulating her on such an effort, asking the 3 to come to the White House, whatever. Like, if you're talking about communication strategy, that would be something that a president who supports a progressive DA would do. Because we haven't heard anything from Donald Trump on this issue, and then compound that with the fact that he has been packing the courts with judges who are against DAs who advocate for this issue, that speaks more to me about their positioning when it comes to such things as the Innocence Project, what they do, exonerating people, wiping slates clean. So I don't have to hear 45 say something explicitly vile, because his actions and implicit bias is already vile enough for me to determine that he is not for these progressive DAs. Nothing in his administration has reflected anything progressive. Nothing in his administration
it's not a progressive administration.
But that's my point. What I'm saying is, nothing that Donald Trump is going to say or going to do is going to align with these DAs. So it doesn't surprise me that he hasn't said anything, but it's also disheartening that he wouldn't.
Well, Kelly, he went to Chicago. He spoke to law enforcement people. He's spoken to folks. He's disparaged the progressive DAs.
Oh, absolutely.
For exonerating people? Is that what he's done?
Like I'm talking. You keep telling Roland not to finish your point. Don't finish mine.
Okay, sure thing.
But in any case, not for exonerating people, but for their position on law and order. This president is straight and narrow. Punish him, throw away the key. Put him in the jail and throw away the key. Well, folks like Marilyn Mosby, like Kamala Harris, when she was in the Bay Area, she was a progressive DA. There were some flaws and some problems, but she basically tried not to incarcerate people. Mm-hmm. These folks are using their discretion to try to keep black folks and brown folks out of jail, especially when there's some question mark. In contrast, you look at a Michael Bloomberg who more than almost 6 million New Yorkers were stopped for stop and frisk. Rudy Giuliani 45's Ace Boone Coon. I mean, he was the one who started this stuff. It's not even that it's a conservative administration. This is an anti-people administration. He's gone in, he saw Kim Kardashian and he's freed somebody. He saw somebody else and he freed somebody. He's doing this one by one when he really could basically let a lot of...
you mean like the First Step Act?
I don't have a problem with the First Step Act.
I'm just saying, that's just something, but that's something that he did. I mean, to say that he's anti-people.
Julian, here's the reality. First of all, here's what I do. I don't chase the rabbit. I'm on this topic. And this topic is very simple. And that is this.
You done the rabbit hole, Roland.
Excuse me. When it comes to this whole issue, of who is largely supporting and opposing these type of projects inside of district attorneys' offices, it is largely Democrats who are creating these units to retest cases to ensure the right person was convicted, and you largely have Republican DAs who are not creating these type of units, who don't support these type of units. And I think it is very easy to say, if there are two parties, one Republican and one Democrat, which one is likely to support these units that will retest and will likely free innocent people? Republicans go down, and it's largely Democrats. Period.
This was a rabbit hole.
Those are facts, Malik.
This was a rabbit hole of your own creation, because we started talking about celebrating the fact that people were exonerated, but you wanted to turn that into a diatribe against the Republican Party and Donald Trump.
How were they exonerated?
I get it.
No,
I mean,
we can talk.
Exonerated? We can talk about the First Step Act.
1 second.
I mean, you're talking about criminal justice reform.
How were they exonerated? No. Answer the question. What led to their exoneration?
Projects like the Innocent Project, district attorneys like...
No, that's not true. No, right. So there was a unit created by Marilyn and Mosby
in what city?
That led to their case being reinvestigated. No. Let's walk this thing back. What 1 second. What led to them being freed? The creation of a unit by Marilyn Mosby. What led to the creation of that unit? The election of Marilyn Mosby.
Okay.
I can make it perfectly. And what led to these folks being freed in Dallas County? The election of Craig Watkins. What led to the election of Craig Watkins? Him beating a Republican for DA. What led to these units being created in Brooklyn? The election of Ken Thompson. See, I can go down the line. Show me an example, Malik. Take your time, where Republicans are leading the effort as DAs to create these type of units that will be freeing innocent people. I'll wait.
Well, we're on the show, so I'm not going to do the research while we're here on the show. But the president has actually...
No.
But the president has
I'll wait.
Okay.
You can
I'll
Google
just
right
you
now.
Just interview
Please,
yourself
by all means,
when you think you're talking to me. Then, Roland.
Pull your phone out, Malik. Pull your phone out.
I'm not going to pull my phone out on air
evidence
to help you whatever argument that you want to make. You're talking about a rabbit hole. You just created an entire crater that you're jumping down just to make a point against the Republican Party and Donald Trump. I get it. This is the strategy.
These things.
I get it, but I would prefer to talk about the criminal justice reform efforts that the president is actually taking up. But that wouldn't satisfy you, because you would rather talk about every other thing that the administration is doing wrong. That you don't agree with.
We're on this topic.
Well, Donald Trump wasn't the topic, though. That was your rabbit hole. Remember last week you talked about deflection and rabbit holes. Donald Trump wasn't the topic. You made him the topic.
Let me remind you. You spoke
about
where our politics are when it comes to these
people who are running for president of the United States.
And yes,
about prosecutors, right? That's what I was talking about. You took it to William Barr and everybody else,
Kelly.
Because
Kelly,
it's a viral moment for you.
Kelly, here's the reality. The reality in this country, Kelly, and this is a fact. The reality in this country is that when it comes to these races, and we just saw it in November, we literally just saw it, where you had progressive district attorneys who were Democrats running in Virginia, where you have had longtime Republican prosecutors who were talking about creating these type of projects, this, Kelly, is indeed a political issue. And if you had to say which party is more likely to create, in essence, innocence-type projects inside of district attorney's office, it is going to be Democrats versus Republican. Kelly, your thoughts?
I mean, the stats show that, right? But what's interesting to me is how Republicans actually don't agree with the progressives on this issue. I understand in terms of, probably ideology why they would disagree. But if Republicans are really about a strong economy and, pulling people up by their own bootstraps and, autonomy and all these things, it would actually make sense for them to get behind an initiative such as this. Why? Because it actually costs more money and more time and more resources and more taxes. Emphasis on the taxes. It would cost more on the American taxpayer to keep these people in prison, to keep them unemployed, to keep them in the system than it would to get them out and actually rehabilitate them so that they can actually be the productive members of society that Republicans swear up and down Black people aren't. So,
well, that's a lie. I mean, that's just a lie.
What's a lie?
That's a lie. You saying that Republicans swear up and down that Black people are not what?
I mean, we have evidence that Republicans have said what about Black people? A lot.
Such as what?
Such as Republicans not caring about Black lives, such as Republicans not caring about who's in the system, why they're in the system, how long they're in the system unfairly and unlawfully.
So you mean just like I just brought up, the First Step Act that we were just talking about? Were that not Black people?
You're fixated on the First Step Act. I'm talking, Melody.
Well, you can continue to talk because you actually cut me off. So remember, if you're going to be respectful, then
you have not been respectful to Roland for this entire show, so don't even start.
You're not Roland. So
but I don't like to see anybody disrespected.
But you're not the host of the show, and I've been disrespected on this show by you and others many times before. So you're not the arbiter of justice here on that.
And neither are you.
Well,
please make your point.
I'm not trying to be.
You seem to be stuck on the First Step Act.
Right, because if we're talking about what the Republican Party is doing, that's one of the things that Republican parties that's doing.
Mellick has been mentioned. And you've mentioned at least 5 times. Roland mentioned it. I mentioned it.
Black people, because I get it. These are the things.
You're very passionate about defending your party.
Well, I'm not passionate about doing anything.
That essentially
has just like all of us. I don't think that you're passionate in things that you're disagreeing with.
One second. No one can hear either one of you. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give Mellick 30 seconds to make your point. Then I'm going to give Julianne 30 seconds to make her point. Then I'm going to commercial break. Go.
My point remains the same. I think that we can talk about criminal justice reform. We can talk about things that the president is or is not doing. But in this particular case, as we're talking about the 2,500 or so people that were exonerated since 1989, I think that's a really good conversation to have. We can give the president and the administration credit when it deserves it, and when it's not, we can criticize them. But the notion that the Republicans, it's always something negative, it's always something bad that a Republican Party or Donald Trump is doing, I actually reject it. And I understand this is not an audience that appreciates that, but I reject it.
No, actually, that's not what I said, but I was specific. Okay, 30 seconds are up. Julianne, go.
We've talked about the First Step Act. No one denies that the First Step Act, imperfect, but a step in the right direction. However, that does not erase the way that Republicans, and I will say it again, Republicans have essentially been anti-Black. Let's look at Jeff Sessions and the places where there were consent decrees to prevent police brutality. He suspended those consent decrees. He didn't like that. He didn't like anything about the rights of people, and that's Mr. Trump's appointee. Bob Barr, same thing. He has spoken about rights. He's spoken about prison.
30 seconds are up. I got it. 30 seconds are up. Bottom line is this, people. When you go to the polls and vote in the primaries in 2020, and when you go to the polls in November, remember, when you're voting for district attorney, ask the question, who supports projects similar to what just freed 3 Black men who served 36 years in prison in Baltimore, and who doesn't? Ask the question, who supports doing nothing against these police officers who framed Black men who served 36 years in prison, who now retired? Who are the people who want to go after their pensions, who want to hold them responsible? Ask yourself the question, which one of the candidates, whether they're Democrat or Republican, are going to line up on those issues, and you vote accordingly. All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, it's the holiday season. This is when you think about spending time with the family and friends. This is also when you count your blessings and support those less fortunate. This year, be a holiday hero and change someone's life forever. Right now, hundreds of thousands of Americans are sitting in jail without being convicted of a crime. Why? Because they lack the financial resources to pay their bail. Now think about it. If you are arrested for any minor offense, you will be taken directly to jail. If you don't have bail money, you will stay there until a court date is scheduled. That could be days, weeks, or even months. Simply put, America's bail system is broken for people of color. Freedom folks should be free. That's why the Ebony Foundation has partnered with the Bail Project and is sponsoring the Home by the Holiday campaign. The Bail Project has helped bail out thousands of people over the years. And with your help, we plan to bail out 1,000 people by New Year's Day. How's that for a holiday gift? A donation from you today can change someone's life tomorrow. Did you know people of color represent upwards of 90% of the jail population across the country? Without bail, nearly 90% of those charged with misdemeanors plead guilty. However, with paid bail, less than 2% receive a jail sentence. Folks, sometimes justice needs just us to fight to join the fight. You can be a holiday hero by donating $25, $50 or more to help the Ebony Foundation bring our brothers and sisters home by the holiday. To donate, go to homebytheholiday.com. It's homebytheholiday.com. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.